Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. As always, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tim. This is Freight Master Resources, where we provide tips, tools, resources, industry news to help you grow and be more successful in the freight industry. Okay, so I didn't get to quite all of the videos that I wanted to do this past week, and this was one of them. Some of you that I've kind of talked to, for the last few weeks, you're starting to see, some success as a freight broker, or maybe you're just starting out, right? Some of you kind of were a little bit disheartened because you're not seeing the progress that you would like to have, excuse me, as a freight broker or a freight agent. So I wanted to go over with you today how top earning freight brokers make more money, right? How they boost their income. So as a basic, we all know freight brokers basically act as middlemen between shippers and carriers, and their earnings depend on the spread, right? Or that margin that they create between the cost of securing a carrier and the price they charge the shipper, okay? Now, here are some ways a freight broker can increase their income. Okay, now these are kind of basics, and stick with me till the end because I've got some additional stuff that I'm going to go over with you that will also help you become more successful as a freight broker or a freight agent. All right, number one, efficiency is key. Okay, this is actually a thing that I have struggled with, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that at the end of the video. But the more loads you move, the more commissions you earn. Look for ways to streamline your processes. Okay, consider freight load boards that use filters, right, like DAT, to reduce time spent contacting carriers, and explore tools that automate tasks like onboarding new carriers. Okay, so if you're still doing PDF, hand filled out packets and that kind of thing, that's a very antiquated way of doing things. It eats time into your day. I understand that some of these auto onboarding, whether it's RMIS, DAT onboard, my care packets, or highway, or whatever you're using, right? Some of that can be a little bit costly. And if you're just starting out as a new freight brokerage, a lot of this software and things, they come with a down payment, and then, of course, your recurring monthly fee, and you don't even have your first customer yet, right? In much the same way, carriers face, upfront costs when they're starting out with a new authority, and they haven't, probably had a chance to build a relationship with a direct shipper or a freight broker or anything yet, so it can be a little bit of a scary thing. Number two, negotiation skills. Okay, sharpen your negotiation skills to secure the best rates from carriers. Okay, the lower the carrier rate you secure, the larger your profit margin. Now, that being said, before any carriers watching this right now jumps all over me, what I mean by that is, if you are a freight broker and you are, let's say, running a particular lane, it might not even be an overly consistent lane or something, right? This is an example. And you're making an 8 to 10% profit margin. If you can bump that somehow to like a 12 or 15% profit margin versus that, 8 to 10, then by all means, if you can do that and still keep your carrier happy, then do that. Okay, I'm not saying beat carriers up, because this was actually kind of a tricky one for me to put in here, because I've known plenty of freight brokers and freight agents, depending upon what the market's doing, whether it's, the market's hot, it's cold, whether we're in a capacity crunch or there's an overabundance of capacity, things like this. I know some freight brokers and agents that will absolutely beat up carriers every chance they get, but they always end up calling when things turn cold, and they're like, Tim, I need more customers. I need more of this. And it's like, look, if you would just build your relationships, right, and not try to become uber rich off of every single load. You know what I mean? Yeah, you were moving freight and things were good for a minute, right? But if consistency is more key, right? You want to be fair, keep your margins fair, and basically your world will turn, because otherwise you're going to have the same scenario as some of the individuals that I just mentioned, and your success will be very limited. The whole goal here is for long-term success. Okay. Moving on. Become an industry expert, right? This is something that I've talked about in previous videos. Stay up to date on market trends and freight rates. Okay. Understanding the market allows you to identify profitable opportunities and avoid getting squeezed on margins. Okay. If you're not sure, if you're not recognizing and analyzing some of the data that's available to you, and you're just kind of sitting back and doing everything sort of day to day and getting very complacent about upcoming trends and things. And this is things that you can actually pass on to your shippers that help you establish your relationships, right? And not only just your shippers, but your carriers as well. I've had numerous conversations over the years with carriers like, hey, Tim, where you see things kind of going, we're in a bit of a slump, and then even some of them have some insights that maybe I hadn't had an opportunity to look at yet, that, they provided me with that information. But it's all about relationship building, right? And understanding the market and where things are kind of headed, whether we're going down or up, and that ebb and flow can be very beneficial, like I said, not only to your earnings, but in building your relationships with your customers and your carriers. Okay. Kind of related to that, build strong relationships. Okay. Cultivate strong connections with both shippers and carriers, right? I beat that subject into the ground. I hope it's gotten through to everybody. Reliable and responsive service can keep shippers coming back and give you leverage when negotiating with carriers. Not only that, but negotiating with your shippers as well, right? Some shippers are, how much you're going to need to pay that carrier oftentimes when a load comes over. And if that customer's short on that rate, having that strong relationship with them, saying, hey, I can get this covered, but I'm going to need like another $200 on this, right? So that all kind of goes hand in hand. Specialization. Okay. Consider specializing in a specific niche within the freight brokerage industry. This allows you to develop deeper industry knowledge and potentially command higher rates. Okay. Just as a quick example of that, there's niches and then there's like micro niches, right? Or that's what I tend to call them anyway, and I'm sure other people do as well. I didn't invent the term. But like there are some brokers and agents that will specialize, since we're into produce season again now, they will specialize in doing LTL produce, right? Where they basically combine multiple produce loads, right? Going the same direction. Sometimes that takes a little bit more work, but typically things like that, because you're filling a small niche, oftentimes those can be more profitable for you. If you're not familiar with the produce part of the industry, right, and moving that and knowing that, for example, corn needs to be iced, then it's something you should probably research, a little bit further, before you jump into something like that automatically, right? Having that knowledge is so key, regardless of what you're doing. Maybe you only move steel coils, or you only move chicken loads, or, whatever it is, right? Moving on, technology adaptation. Utilize technology to your advantage. Freight management software can help you stay organized, track shipments, and optimize your workflow. Okay. Now, along with that, we did a recent video a while back on AI and how that's becoming more and more a part of our industry. We've seen things like, automated email responses, and there's different systems out there, softwares that will collect carrier rates for loads. And we've seen it with like the Book It Now feature on the load boards, like Truck Stop and DAT, and things. And there's others out there. I think there's a Parade is another one. And so, these are all things that kind of help streamline your day, help you stay more organized, because ultimately what we want to be doing is strengthening our relationships, doing more cold calling, all of that kind of thing. All right. Helps you, again, optimize your workflow. Now, this is something that oftentimes gets overlooked by agents, and that is marketing and networking. All right. Don't neglect marketing your services. Build an online presence and attend industry events to connect with potential clients. Okay. Networking with other brokers can also be fruitful. Okay. Maybe, you're a really small company and you don't have access to LTL. Okay. But you have a customer that's requesting LTL. Sometimes those co-broker agreements that you can put into place and networking with those other brokers that have access to, good LTL rates, through common carriers, can be very beneficial, right? Doesn't mean you have to work with them on every single load, and things like that. But, there's small things, because I'm not a real big fan of co-broker agreements. I'm just not. I mean, there are times where it can be beneficial depending upon the size, the complexity of your load. Sometimes you'll get a customer with an off-the-wall request, right? That's really like outside the norm. I've run into it. It was not, early on in my career as a freight broker. There was things that would get presented to me that I wasn't very familiar with or had no idea of. So oftentimes it can be beneficial for you to have a mentor broker, or someone that you can ask questions to, or even co-broker that load with. And it might mean that you don't make any money on the load, right, to keep that customer happy. And for that, and in return, you're basically you're gaining knowledge about that specific type of freight, and that might open up a whole new niche for you, right? Maybe you're like, well, that wasn't near as complicated as I really thought it was, but I had no idea, right? Because none of us are born with the knowledge, right, in this industry, or any industry really, and that's why knowledge is so key, right? Networking, building relationships, and I will elaborate on that a little bit as well. Network with your carriers, right? There's carrier app, with the social media, like our Facebook group and things. Sometimes it can be very beneficial to ask carriers about a specific type of freight, right? They're the ones handling it. So why would you not want to get their insight on it and their knowledge, right? And that might build a whole new relationship for you, right? Working with those carriers. So those are basically the strong points of this topic. Couple of things that I really want to add that I asked everybody to kind of stick around for till the end. There has been a trend, and I'm not picking on newer generations or anything, but and it doesn't matter whether it's the freight brokerage industry, or the freight industry or any other industry, but when you look at and talk to, gain insight from some of these other, top sales executives and things, one of the things that they've been talking about more and more is that, a lot of the younger generation or the newer generation, they don't like to call, right? They want to do everything through text or email. And cold calling is really almost becoming kind of a lost art. But a lot of the people that you are going to prospect want that phone call, right? They don't want to read your emails. Emails can still be effective, right? Just like networking through LinkedIn, which is another thing as far as networking goes. I probably should have added that to my list. as a way to network and that is make sure you have a very strong LinkedIn profile and, start making connections with carriers, prospects, things like that. And I think I have a video on that somewhere where we talk about, our LinkedIn presence. Okay. It's again, for those of you that aren't real familiar with it, or you're like, yeah, I've got it, but I don't really use it. It's really basically just like Facebook, but it's for business professionals, right? And it's really great way to network. But yeah, don't be afraid of that phone. Okay. And I've had several phone calls, emails with some of you here, over the last month. And they're like, Tim, I just, I'm not getting anywhere with anything. And really one of the biggest things that's standing out to me is their main focus is on emailing. Okay. And that might be the reason for the limited success. I've used it. I still use it, but I don't make it a major part of my prospecting efforts, right? It's really more about that phone call. It's a little more personalized, right? And you can't really relay everything that you want to in an email. And they're not going to read a book, right? If you try to do that in an email, they're not going to read all of that. They don't know who the hell you are. Okay. So really, and that it does not give you an opportunity to combat any rejections that they might have, right? Whereas with a phone call, if they go, yeah, we don't use brokers, or we're all set at the moment, or everything's FOB, or whatever. Sometimes you can even slip in, even if a majority of their freight is customer routed. Oftentimes they still have at least a couple of shipments that you might be able to get started on with them. And oftentimes that can even turn into, well, our customer, they send in their own trucks, but they're having problems with their current broker. Is that something that you might be able to help them out with? Right. So that, and I've had those conversations, right? I've gotten those referrals, and it's all about, again, under promising, over delivering, not being complacent. Okay. Properly vetting our carriers, building those strong relationships. I've got customers that have been with me for years and years. Okay. I know that I've talked in the past about, your fault, their fault, nobody's fault. At some point in time, customers will leave you. Not always, but, sometimes they do. And there's nothing you can do about it. Look at the pandemic. A lot of people lost their book of business, or, and some businesses went under. They just couldn't survive, not operating during that period of time. And there was a lot of companies that flourished during that period of time. Those that were manufacturing toilet paper and, the disinfectant sprays and masks and hand sanitizers and bleach and all of that kind of thing. It was, there was certain segments that were very profitable, whereas others, kind of fell by the wayside. I had customers that went under, and they tried to stick it out as long as they could. They were smaller shippers, but we did a lot of business with them, right? I was the only broker there. We handled all of their partials, their full truckloads. We had some pretty regular lanes, but because their product was not a y'all help me. I'm drawing a brain. It wasn't like a required type item. There was no need for it during the pandemic. And so ultimately, them as a smaller company, they fell by the wayside. And that goes back to your fault, their fault, nobody's fault, right? It was just happenstance, with, the economy, the pandemic and everything, that ended up happening. So that's why we always want to keep networking. We always want to keep cold calling. And again, going back to my last point on there about marketing and networking. I don't think I mentioned this, but for you freight agents out there, You don't have to have, your own agency with sub agents under you, but having that online presence, right? Whether it's a Facebook page, maybe, a website to help market, you know, your online presence can be very, very beneficial. I did. My first job as a freight agent, back in the day, I didn't really know a lot about building websites and things. Couldn't really afford to build a web, to hire somebody because they wanted, $1,500, $3,500, whatever it was. And at the time, I really wasn't sure if this was even going to work out, right? It was kind of scary, especially after I took my training, and I realized that there were so many gaps in that training, because I had no sales background, right? When you talk about a noob, I look on the dictionary, you can see a picture of me, right? So yeah, I wasn't really sure. So, I think I got on I don't remember what it was, but I know there's like Weebly, what is it, Wix, some of those, that, do it yourself, drag and drop things. It doesn't have to be anything over elaborate, right? It can be a one-page static website, things like this, and there again, and then jump on, if you're on Instagram or whatever, post pictures. That's something I still like to do, is have drivers send me pictures of the load, right? Not just for verification, but because I utilize that with my social media content. I haven't really uploaded anything in a while, but and I usually would talk about, oh, what a great job so and so did, that kind of a thing, right? Especially when I was moving a lot of open deck type freight, you can see that the load was very well secured. The driver was a true professional, right? And I had no problem, bragging up that carrier, right? And in turn, a potential prospect who might come across that would say, holy cow, Tim's got, great carriers. Look at that load. Maybe they're shipping steel coils, he really, he has a very good carrier network, that with carriers that really know what they're doing. That's what we need, right? And I've actually had shippers reach out to me. I still do. Does it happen every day? No. Does it happen every month? No. But usually at least a few times a year, I end up getting a call because of my online presence, from someone saying, hey, can you help me? What do you got? I'll tell you. And there's times I've actually referred them to a different broker because it was something that I just didn't have. I wasn't comfortable with, but I knew somebody, and there again, networking with other brokers, or even other carriers. And I've done that too. I've said, you know what? Hey, but I know a carrier in your area, and based on your volumes, I know that they'd be more than happy to help you out. And pass on their information, call my carrier and say, hey, I've got a direct shipper for you. They should be reaching out, but here's their information, right? And I know that can sound a little bit counterproductive for me as a broker, because you're like, but as their fleet grows, I'm going to continue to use that carrier, right? But it helps them stay profitable, helps them stay in business, and in turn, it strengthens my relationship with them. Whether you agree with that or not, leave me a comment down below. Call me an idiot if you want to. I don't care. But yeah, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Build your online presence. It's becoming so much more prevalent today. And it has been for a long period of time. So basically, remember that success in freight brokerage is a combination of efficiency, expertise, relationship building, and strategic marketing. Okay. By continuously improving your skills and approach, you can increase your income and establish yourself as a valuable player in the industry, right? Just because you're brand new, you're a one-person operation, you can still be very successful in this industry. And especially with the market, kind of starting to warm, we're starting to see signs of that warming up. If you haven't already, do it now, right? Build those relationships, utilize those tips that I just went over for you. Okay. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I went a little bit over on this video than what I originally intended, but I hope you guys found it very beneficial. And again, I love the comments. You know, I'm glad that you guys are enjoying my content and everything, and that you're finding it helpful. You know, and if you guys have an idea for an upcoming topic that you'd like me to discuss, by all means. If you need any other tools or resources, I have everything in the description down below. If there's a particular product or service that I don't have listed for you and you need a recommendation from me, I will be more than happy to provide that for you. And you can go ahead and email me at freightmasterresources@gmail.com. Again, I do keep that email monitored pretty regularly, even over the weekend. So don't be afraid to email me and think, you know, oh, Tim won't get back to me till Monday. No, you know, maybe I don't monitor it as much on the weekend, but I still keep I still peek at it every once in a while. Okay. So, with that, again, I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I'm glad to see so many people survive the blitz and everything. Like I said, as always, be kind to one another.